Last week, I gave you an assignment. I talked about procrastination, and many of you, as I stated, already have my book, Leaving Peace in Order, and the workbook. But have you started it yet? Well, I promised last week that we were going to walk through the pages of the workbook so that you can complete each section. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Kimberly Ivory Graves, your HELP Holistic Elite Legacy Planner. I am so glad that you are joining me today and you're ready for this journey of completing your workbook. Before we get started, our scripture for today is found in Isaiah 53, verse 5, and it reads, "But he was wounded for our transgressions," talking about Jesus. "He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed." As I always say, we share the scripture of the week because I have the Clubhouse show every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we talk about 52 weeks of peace. We pick a different scripture each week, the scripture of the week, and we expound upon it. So I invite you to join me and my friends every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on Clubhouse. And make sure you invite someone that needs peace in their life. Why don't you invite them to join us on Clubhouse? And you also can go back and listen to the replays of all the shows we've done so far. Click down on the links below and it'll give you all the information. Thank you. Well, let's get started. I do not want to delay the time. I am talking about my book, Leaving Peace in Order, which is a step-by-step guide to getting your affairs in order. And I'm talking about the workbook, which is the mini workbook. And then I have the full-size workbook. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, as promised, walk through each section of the book. I mentioned last week that there are 13 categories, I think 15 categories in the book. And so we're going to take a section at a time. And I'm going to tell you what the section is and encourage you to complete that information. And maybe I'll bring on other individuals, experts, to talk about certain segments and all of that. That is the plan. So let's get started. The first section in this workbook is called, "What Are Your Final Wishes?" And the caption reads, "Use this section to document your final wishes. This is your opportunity to be specific with what you desire and to make your requests known to your loved ones. You may modify this information at any time." So the first section is, of course, you would put your name in there and you would say, "My final wishes are." So the first section that I encourage you to fill out is your religious affiliation. If you're affiliated with a particular church organization or any type of organization that you're affiliated with, make sure that you write down the name of that organization and the name of the clergy, the pastor, the priest, the leader, whomever. Make sure you write that down along with that person's phone number, because this is going to be the first person that I believe your family members will contact as it relates to your final wishes. Now, if you don't have any, you're not affiliated with any type of organization or religious organization, you can leave the section blank, or you can designate who you want called first as it relates to your final wishes. The second section of this section is your preferred funeral home. If you haven't already selected a funeral home of choice, This is where I encourage you to, why don't you do this? Why don't you take the time? Now, don't put this off. This is very, very important. Take the time and select 3 different funeral homes. One could be a high-end, middle, 3 different grades, and ask for their price sheet and get the information and do a comparison, because maybe your favorite funeral home, or the family funeral home, the funeral home that your family has used for years and years, may be a lot more expensive than the other 2 that you compared with. So this is an exercise that you need to do to just kind of compare, do a comparison, shop around, see which funeral home has the needs that will meet your needs, the needs that you require as it relates to your final wishes, and that it's affordable, that it will accommodate the amounts of monies that you have put aside for your burial expenses and all of that. So once you've done that, in this section, you're going to write the name of the funeral home, the address, the funeral director, and then you're going to designate what type of service you want. Whether you want your service there at the funeral home, or whether you want your service somewhere else at the hall, at the church, whatever location that you want. Next is select your preferred funeral service types. So this is whether you want to have your service in a church or a chapel, whether you want a memorial, or you don't want to have a service at all. Make sure you let your family members know exactly what you want. This is a good time to do this now. You can be very, very intentional about what you want and what you don't want. And really, it will make it so much easier for your family members to handle this. They're not guessing and wondering whether you want a service or not. Like I stated on previous shows, my mom was very adamant about what she wanted and what she didn't want. She did not want a service, so we didn't have a service for her. So maybe you want an elaborate service. Make sure you designate that. Other options are, do you want an open casket, closed casket? Do you want flowers? Do you want the obituary read? Do you get to have military honors? Let's see. Do you want to wear your glasses? Do you want your wedding ring on? Do you have a select attire that you picked out? Do you have a music selection? Favorite scripture or poem? In lieu of flowers, do you want them to send donations to a particular organization or to someone in specific? You can designate that now. Make sure that if you have special requests, that you are documenting this information. The next section, it continues your preferred funeral service location. Of course, you can pick, whether you're going to have your funeral service at the funeral home, at a church or a chapel, at the grave site, or you just do not want to have any type of service at all. Again, you get to designate that, write down the location, write down the address, and make sure that your family knows. Another section here is, are you a part of any type of other organization, like a fraternity or like the military or religious organizations? And you want them to have part in your services, make sure that you write this down, that you designate a contact name, contact person for this information. Okay, what is your preferred resting place? Do you prefer internment, entombment, or cremation? So internment and entombment involves the cemetery. So make sure that you select the cemetery that you'll be using. Again, shop around. You may decide that you don't want to be in the family where all the family members are buried, that you want to select a different cemetery. Do you want to be in a mausoleum? You can select that. Make sure that you're very, very, very specific on what you want as it relates to your burial. Now, if you are also with this, is make sure that if you've already prepaid and have bought your plot and all of that, make sure you put down the plot number, the plot information. All of that information needs to be documented. As I share my story about my mom had selected her burial plot already. And I shared how I had to share with them, the funeral director and the cemetery manager, I had to let them know what her plot number was. And because I had all of this stuff, all of this information organized and in the right place, I was able to tell them that my mom had plot number ... And it just made the process so much easier. So if you've already purchased your plot or made a payment upon it, let your family members know. Document the name of the cemetery, document the plot number, what you paid on it. If you owe anything else on it, make sure this information is documented and your family members are aware. Another thing my mom did was she pre-purchased her casket. Now this I didn't know, but when we were meeting with the funeral director, when we were almost finished, he said, "Would you like to see the casket your mom picked out?" And Amy and I looked at each other. We didn't realize that she had picked out her own casket and that she had paid for it. She had already selected what she wanted. So he showed us what she had selected and we didn't have to worry about picking out a casket. Again, we're just walking through this section of what are your final wishes. This is the first section of the Leaving Peace in Order workbook. I encourage you, if you haven't gotten the workbook, you haven't gotten my book, please click on the information below or go to kimberlyivorygraves.com. That's my website, kimberlyivorygraves.com, and you can order the materials as we walk through, because we will be walking through this workbook. I'm right now using the mini workbook. I do have a larger size workbook, but it's easier to hold this one. But I do encourage you, definitely, please get this so that you can complete this information for your family. Okay, it has here, if you're having a service, who are the pallbearers? Who do you want to carry your casket and all of that? Make sure you list that out. Cremation. If you designate that you want to be cremated, have you purchased an urn? And if you're not, do you have any specific specifications about the urn, where you want your ashes to go? Any of that information is important for your family, so make sure you add that. The next section is organ donation. Now, this is vitally important because if the family members don't know that you signed up to have your organs donated, this can delay the process of having your services if you want services, because right away the hospital will take your body or they'll hold your body so that they can, remove the organs and donate them based on, what your request is. And so it is important that you document this information that you are an organ donor, and so that your family is aware of it. And I guess they can even make that decision after you pass. Do you want them to donate your organs? If you do, make sure they know this. If you don't, then specify that you do not want your organs donated. Again, next section is, there's a section here that you can put any specific wishes that you have as it relates to your final wishes, your burial and all of that. You can state that information here. And then the question is, how is all of this going to be paid for? Do you have life insurance? Have you prepaid for any of your funeral expenses? Like I said, my mom had purchased her plot. She already had designated an insurance policy for her final, arrangements. And so you need to do that. You need to stress whether you have a set policy that's set aside to handle your, or if you have monies in the bank that says paid upon death, that your family member can pull out and use that money just for your final arrangements. Make sure you designate that. This is information that needs to be documented and stressed. I know that we don't want to talk about dying, but we're not talking about dying. We're talking about having your affairs in order while you are living. This is living peace and order because we are doing those things that will assist our family members once we transition. So do you have an insurance policy? Make sure you write down the insurance company and the policy number and the contact person. If you have a bank account that is payable upon death, POD account, make sure you designate that, the bank information. If you have no money for your burial, make sure you stress that. But I encourage you to do what you need to do as it relates to planning your end of life expenses, planning for your end of life expenses. Don't leave your family members reaching out to others with a GoFundMe page trying to pay for your burial and your final arrangements. That's embarrassing. And I know some things happen that, you know, people have to reach out for help and ask for help, and that's fine. But we have an opportunity to make sure that our affairs are in order. I'm going to stop right there. That's the end of this particular section of what are your final wishes. And as I promised, we are going to walk through the Leaving Peace and Order book. Well, actually the workbook. We're going to walk through it each week for the next few weeks. And I encourage you to grab your family members, grab your friends, encourage them to join us and make sure that they take the steps to complete this information. Now, you may not want to go this slowly on getting your affairs in order. You may want to just go ahead and complete it. I encourage you, go ahead and do it. But this video is for those of you who need that extra push, that extra encouragement to get the job done. So now, one, make sure you go back, review this video, make sure you subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the notification. Make sure you share and comment. Let other people know that they're doing this. Also, if you haven't gotten your book and workbook, get your workbook and book. Order it on kimberlyivorygraves.com. Go ahead and place your order and get that book. So as we walk through, next week we'll be covering section 1, which is your personal information. So we'll be covering that on next week or the next time we walk through the steps, because I may, like I said, I may bring in experts in between each segment to even give us further information on the topic. So I'm working on that, but thank you. Thank you for joining the Living Peace and Order show. It is my prayer and my endeavor and my assignment to be a blessing to you and to help you leave peace and order for your family while you are living peace and order. God bless you. I'm Kimberly Ivory Graves, and I love you with the love of Jesus. Have an amazing night, day, afternoon, whatever time it is. Bye-bye.